Were you made aware that the newborn screening tests included a test for Duchenne muscular dystrophy?
Yes, we were fully aware of the Duchenne test and its implications at the time of testing. We have an older son, and we were made aware when he was tested several years before, and this time the midwife explained to us that we'd be having a test for a condition for which there was no treatment. So we fully understood all its implications. But we just, so we decided to go for the test. I think during pregnancy, mums tend to have every test that's available to them, and you do it as an insurance policy because you think it's never going to be positive for me. And I think with the Duchenne's we were much the same. There's no family history of any muscle disease, and so we thought we should have the test, and we had both of our sons tested.
Who informed you of the diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and what professional support did you receive? Is there anything you'd have liked to be done differently? We were tested 10 days after Alex was born, which would have been towards the end of the October, and on the 5th of January our health visitor phoned me and asked if she could pop in on her way home from work just to see us, and she had a couple of things she wanted to talk to us about. So she came in, and I'd had a really nice relationship with our health visitor. She'd been to the house lots of times to see Alex when he was small and see the other children. And so she came out and she said that the test had come back with a high CK level, and that it was probably nothing to worry about and we shouldn't spend the night worrying, but on the next morning at 9 o'clock could we take Alex down for a second test. And she went through all the reasons why the CK test might have been high. Alex was born, it was a difficult delivery, so he was born with shoulder dystocia, so he was born sort of like Superman, and his muscle, there could have been a lot of muscle damage because he was a 9'12" baby. So we assumed, we hoped for the best. We didn't think for 1 minute that we would have a positive Duchenne result. And so the next week, we didn't do any internet searching or try and find out anything the night before. We just thought, let's go to bed and take him for the test tomorrow, and it's going to come back negative. And so off we went to the hospital, and it was a very snowy day in Cardiff, and all the streets were closed, and it was 2 foot of snow everywhere, completely white. And we left our older children, school was closed, we left our older children with a friend, and off we went. And when we got there were 2 paediatricians waiting for us, one to do the blood test, and the other one was organising, there was a cab waiting literally at the door to take the sample away. So at that point I think it really dawned on us the seriousness of what was happening, and we were told to go home and come back at 2 o'clock. And I specifically requested from the paediatrician that as soon as he knew anything, if he could phone us, but he hadn't phoned by the time we needed to leave to go back to the hospital. And so I think we knew at that point that we were going back to a positive test, because had it been negative, we would have had a phone call. And he just took us into a side room and he just said, I'm afraid it's positive. He had no literature, no contact number, he didn't even have the name of a charity that we could contact. He just told us and left us to walk out of the room. Not a cup of tea, or even any sympathy. He handled it, I think, very, very badly, and it could have been a lot different. He could have had some information, he could have had a contact number of somebody that we could call to talk to, and he could have, he could have just had a cup of tea ready for us, sugar in it. It was, I think it was handled very badly. But in fairness to him, he said, previously, he said, I can't tell you anything. Previously, I've only ever had 2 callback positive results, and they both ultimately turned out to be negative, so they were false positives during the first testing. So I think for him, although he had a very difficult job to do, but I think it could have been done better. There could have been an information pack or something. The only other health professional then who stepped in was our health visitor, who came round and offered tea and sympathy and basically looked after us in the subsequent days.
So there's currently no effective treatment to prevent the development of symptoms in boys with Duchenne. Would you advise a new parent to undergo screening for the condition, and would your advice change if there was an effective treatment?
I think having the results and having the test was the best situation for us to be in as a family. Alex is the third child, and I think knowing about the condition will allow us to do things before he's, affected, and it allows us to plan. We can move to a home to accommodate him better as he gets older and the disease takes hold. And it's not that we're then moving because of Duchenne, we're moving before the Duchenne has an implication. I think psychologically it's a lot easier to manage if you know from an early age. So I would like to see newborn screening introduced. However, I would like parents to be given the information about the disease ahead of having to make that decision at 10 days to have the screening test. I think all parents get a bounty book during their pregnancy, and it tells you all the screening that you have during your pregnancy and all the terrible things that can go wrong. And I think if in that book there was something about Duchenne and that test, and you almost signed or made your decision before you got to that point at 10 days, because at 10 days, especially for first-time parents, you've got a new baby, you could be high as a kite because you've done the most amazing thing and you have the world's most beautiful baby in front of you, and you think, oh, we'll have it done because he's perfect, there can't possibly be anything wrong with him. Or you could be on the floor because you haven't slept for 10 days and you don't make an informed decision, you make an on-the-cuff judgment, and that decision will change your life and your family's life forever. So I think if people were given the information during their pregnancy and made their choice, and at 10 days then decided, actually we don't want to know, or yes, we definitely still want to go ahead with our decision, I think that would be the best situation for us to be in.
And did knowing your baby had Duchenne before any symptoms occur impact your bonding or your relationship with him?
I think if anything, it's brought us closer. I think, he's the third child for us, and he could have been sort of, just dragged along to every event that the older children go to, but I think we've made more of an effort to do things just for Alex, rather than Alex just getting along and coming along with the other two. So I think, and we've been very open with friends and family. Everybody knows Alex, everybody knows about his condition. So when we take him out locally, everybody stops to talk about him because they know he's special. And he gets treated as a special boy. Everyone's got a smile for him. People give him pocket money for chocolate as we're going down the street. So I think for him, it's made him unique. He's like the fifth grandchild, but he's not lost as being the fifth grandchild. He's like the star of the family. So I think for him, all it's brought him is more love. That's how we feel.
So were you made aware that the newborn screening tests included a test for Duchenne muscular dystrophy?
We were, but literally a minute before the test was actually going to happen. So that's the first we ever heard about it. It was an extra test that we could sign up for. The way it was sold to us was that it was a genetic test. It's very rare. It comes back as it never comes back positive. And we were both. We'd only been home a couple of days. So it was day 6 after Seth was born, and we would. That's as much information as we had about it. Just, there's another test you can do. It always comes back negative. We only do it on boys for something called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which neither of us had actually heard of before.
And so who informed you of the diagnosis of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and what professional support did you receive at that point? And is there anything you'd have liked to be done differently?
Right, we were informed by the health visitor that there was a problem. She phoned us on a Monday, and said that she was coming to see us. So I had to come home from work and things because we knew that there must have been a problem. She then tried to explain about muscular dystrophy, but didn't really know anything about it. We were then taken to or sent to the local hospital with paediatrics up at St David's, where we had some more testing. The test was repeated and we spoke to a paediatrician at the time there, and then that afternoon we were then given slightly more formal results with a paediatrician, the health visitor and the newborn screening nurse. After that we were really left to our own sort of devices as far as we're concerned. We don't feel that we had any support, and certainly most of the information we've got about Duchenne muscular dystrophy has been from patient advocacy groups like Muscular Dystrophy Campaign, Action Duchenne, and Duchenne Family Support Group. So from a health point of view, we didn't get much in the way. We did eventually get an appointment to see the professor of genetics, but that was a little way down the line, and that really didn't help us very much at all. And it was an incredibly difficult time.
So there's currently no effective treatment for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. With that in mind, would you advise a new parent to undergo the screening for the condition, and would your advice change if a treatment became available?
The way that the newborn screening was undertaken with my family, I would advise everybody not to do it. I think, personally, I don't think that you should be testing for conditions that there aren't treatments for, and that has been where newborn screening has stopped up till now. But certainly, at the end of the day, I did sign the bit of paper for the test. I consider that to be the worst mistake I've ever made. It's had a terrible effect on our family life. It's put a big strain on everybody who knows and loves Seth. As for if there was a viable treatment, there are these treatments that are coming online now. If you go online and go to conferences, you hear about them all the time. Yes, absolutely, these are going to be whole of life treatments, and yes, I would actively support people to know about this so you can start treating them straight away, but we weren't in that position, and so we were left fairly high and dry and felt really alone and with nothing to do but wait.
So did knowing your baby had Duchenne muscular dystrophy before any symptoms occurred impact your bonding and relationship with the child?
Well, right now he's just had his 4th birthday last week, and he's hit all of his milestones, he's hit all of his markers. Because we know about the Duchenne, there are little things that we say, oh yeah, when we notice things, but grossly he's a normal little boy, a 4-year-old boy, and so we would love to not know about Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I think it's put a real strain on how we've dealt with Seth as a child, and certainly I think I can speak for my wife, who found it really difficult in the early stages bonding with him, and really, she always says she wishes she could have that first 6 or 8 months back where she knew about it. I mean, we'd rather have not known about it now, but there's never going to be a good time to get a diagnosis like this. But I think to find out within 6 weeks of being born that there's this terrible condition that you might not notice any effects for a number of years is just cruel and unusual torture, and certainly has, as I said, it's put a real strain on the family as a whole.
So do you think that the early diagnosis helped in planning and managing your child's condition?
Well, we're still in the very early stages of the care and the management and the planning, so it's difficult to assess that, but I would say that because we know, we've then taken every opportunity to make sure that we are fully aware of the situation, and that we have, wherever we need to, put Seth in the right place so that the clinicians do know about him, because he has a particular type of Duchenne that is being looked at in the trials at the moment, so we've made sure we've pushed to get him up to Great Ormond Street very early, things like that, so we've been pushing him forward because we know of that. Whether I'd sort of balance that with rather not knowing, I think I'd still rather not know, and be in the position where, yes, you're going to have some terrible news and it's going to come to you at some point, but not when somebody's, or when you've just got your firstborn 6 weeks old, you know, your pride and joy, you just want those good times to go on forever.
Cool, that's fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add, or anything you want to say? Feel free.
I think the way if I was to give advice to anybody who's setting up a newborn screening program, because as I said, we're not against newborn screening, we're against what happened to us, which was the fact that we feel that we were left completely alone after that diagnosis. And there was no formal support. We had various people dropping in or out, but again, they were all from a position of, you know, trying to be really helpful and caring, but not knowing anything about the condition, so nobody could answer any of the specifics about Duchenne muscular dystrophy. There are neuromuscular consultants in the local hospitals, but they're not Duchenne specialists, although they look after boys with Duchenne, so they couldn't answer our questions, and the geneticists couldn't really answer our questions, so they weren't particularly helpful. And certainly from an emotional and psychological point of view, we were very much left to get on with things ourselves, and that was a very, very difficult time. And you know, our GP actually, you know, holds his hands up and says, well, I've never looked after anybody with Duchenne muscular dystrophy and I know nothing about it. So it's, where do you go to? And to my mind, until all of these other points can be addressed, you know, perhaps the money should be saved and used on educating midwives, health visitors and GPs about Duchenne muscular dystrophy. The service, as it was provided, isn't very joined up. The test is performed by a midwife, so they only see one part of it, the testing part of it. The diagnosis is then given to you by a healthcare advisor, but they may never have done that before, never come across a Duchenne patient before, so it's a very difficult time for everybody, you know. And then you're sort of left to go and find your various specialities, and as I said, most of our information has been come from patient advocacy groups, which I don't think is right. And certainly our thoughts were is that, you know, if Wales was going to be a leader in newborn screening, a world leader in newborn screening, then they should at least strive to be, you know, giving us the adequate treatment and support.